if you could be so nice to take a seat. We are in the very lucky situation, and this is going to sound very German, that we are now ahead by 3 minutes and 29 seconds. And we refuse to leave them on the table. So, because at the end of the day, it's about you and not about us. So our panelists have kindly agreed to yet come back up on the stage. And if I could ask our team to please display the Slido. There we are. Okay, by the way, one clarification. It's easy to get confused between word cloud and the Q&A function, right? For the Q&A, obviously, it's the Q&A, and for the keywords, it's word cloud. Okay, the one that got the greatest thumbs up is, how is it possible that government has a lower trust record than Google?
I think that's for
Wow,
me.
all right, that's for you, Andy, thank you.
So let me say up front, I wanted to mention that this survey was about the US government. I do believe that the faith of Germans in the German government is quite a bit higher. And I don't know whether there's any service on this, but it is true that in the US, it's a very large country, and some people feel they don't have any sort of control of what's going on and stuff, especially in California. Washington is very far away, and Silicon Valley just would like to be left alone from Washington anyway, So there's a lot of libertarian kind of thinking that may say that the world would be better with a smaller government, perhaps, so just one that has less rules and regulations. And every time there's a new regulation, the various, that actually harms the system more than it helps. So I don't know how to quite. There's so many reasons why people are nervous about government intervention in the internet and free speech, and and especially when in the end, the objective is clearly to help some particular political party with the ruling that's being made. So it's a never-ending discussion, and maybe it's not as bad in Germany, but I think it's actually this very discussion that's making people a little unsettled about the government's role in a technology which most people view as a personal technology that they use every day. And I never knew what was bad about sponsored ads, or yes, there's maybe the Oxford Analytics signal was bad, but at the end of the day, Facebook is a very useful platform if you want to stay in touch with your friends. So the actual negative that people experience, is, I think, out of whack with the public perception that the world is ending because all the data is now in one computer. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Andy. I will hand the word to Christoph, but before I do, it's also coming back to what do we actually mean by trust? Right? Do I trust Google to deliver great services and great knowledge and very reliable? Do I believe that they have great privacy policies? Yes. And on the other hand, I'm still questioning whether everything that happens there has enough of my agency, right? So this trust definition is so amorphous, it's so tricky, and it's very individual, right? Do I trust the US government or the military to keep me safe in an act of war? Maybe. Do I trust it intervening in civil society? Probably not.
If you could just add something. So I trust Google Maps if it gives me the right directions and tells me how long it takes to come to this meeting this morning, so I know whether I'm late or not, right? Or I trust Google Mail to compose a message for you, which may be what I want to say, and I could just hit return and the message is sent. So these are maybe trivial examples where by Google knowing who I am and where I am and what I want to say can make my life easier, quite frankly, and that's great. Of course, I wouldn't trust it if it was the other way around, right?
Right. Very different trust situation.
Yeah. Can I pick up a question from the list, which just disappeared? I think the question was, will AI be forced or mandated to explain why it came to a certain result? My guess would be interested to get your guess. It might be, but we won't be able to understand the answer. There's this super book called Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, who very intelligently pointed out that we will probably not be able to understand the question. So we come to that situation that was well described in The Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, where the answer is 42. It's the right answer, but we don't understand what the answer means. And this also might allude to the question that just come up here. What can we do to increase trust in AI or decrease mistrust? It's really quite a challenge, but because most likely most of us will not likely be able to be understanding what's happening there, because it's becoming so complex, especially when quantum computing is involved, that it's probably very hard for most of us to grasp what's really going on.
Right. The very nature of neural networks are probabilistic numbers that sort of relate, one node to the next node. And it's a little bit like the human brain, where if you ask a human, why would they vote Democrat or Republican, they will just say, well, because that's why I vote. But they couldn't explain to you the history of their life, of what they learned and what experiences they had that led them to this conclusion. So this question of trying to get back to the root cause of how people make decisions is as hard as asking the AI computer how to make a decision. You will never find it.
Yeah, this is also incidentally why the U.S. Defense Department has, DARPA, the Long Range R&D organization of the U.S. Defense Department, has started a project called Explainable AI, using one AI to explain another AI. Because even AI scientists are not really able to explain what goes on in that, oversimplified human brain that we call AI, right?
I mean, it works in limited domains. I'm just talking about sort of more generalized AI. Like on the self-driving cars, right? Google had this problem that on a four-way stop, there's no right before left in the US, and the self-driving car wasn't aggressive enough to go into the intersection. So the other people looked at the car, there was nobody driving, and they just kept driving in, and it never got through. So, there's basic issues of how do you even understand what the self-driving car may want to do, and it may have to signal that to other drivers, humans in this case, to understand it, right? But the algorithm was actually clear, it's just it didn't actually work in the real world.
Yeah. My co-author and partner, Mark Nitzberg, who is also in the room, works for the Center for Human Compatible AI at Berkeley, the other school up the road, that actually examines how humans signal to each other as they nudge into traffic and how difficult it is to teach a machine that. But unless you do, humans won't trust the machine.
And this may be the hardest problem with self-driving cars, is there's no human on the other side.
Okay, we got one here. What does Germany need to do in the next 5 years to remain competitive in AI in the digital economy? Big question. We wrote reports about it, but I would love to hear from the two freshest Germans on the panel here.
Maybe I'll start there. So I think a couple of things. We also have the question here on education, and I think this is an important aspect. I talked about the workforce. We have a deep need for AI talent, and also going down, of course, other IT talent, at the same time as we see this disruption to our industries happen. And so it's sort of this weird situation that we have too many of one skill set and not enough of the other. Yeah. And the speed of changes is just worrisome. So investing into sort of digital literacy and into AI literacy in terms of education is very important. And I think beyond that, what I pointed out in my presentation, the whole era of industrial AI is pretty much tailor-made for the German skill set and for the tradition of German industry. It's sort of not this quickly breaking the rules, go forward and do stuff, but make sure that what you do actually is, as a foundation is solidly proven and trustful as you launch it. Maybe a comment on trust. You asked, how do we define what trust even is? In my view, trust is something implicitly given until it's broken, right? So once it goes away, you know what it was. And it's sort of the task to find out and to think about it in a broad sense, that you behave ethically and trustful, so not to provoke that.
And I think most humans, most people find out way too late that trust is really the most important currency in society and in the economy. You can always make more money, but trust is really hard to regain, right?
And can I just comment on the 5 years in Germany in AI? Two things. Stop being complacent and start investing. Whenever you say the word AI in Germany, somebody says Saarbrücken, because we have the Center for Competence in Saarbrücken, which is tiny these days. Yes, we invented the fax machine, we invented the first self-driving car, we invented the battery, but where are we now? We're very good at inventing stuff and not industrializing it. This is ridiculous. Let's start being realistic and start investing in AI. The 500 million that our government has introduced is just a laugh compared to what the Chinese and the Americans are investing. Let's be honest and say we are underspending. Let's start spending money. I just met a professor from, I think he's Heidelberg. He just immigrated over to the MIT because he simply didn't get any funding for his projects in Heidelberg. We must wake up and spend much, much more money, in the billions, on AI.
Yes.
And one other thing about education, I think education on software and AI should start in high school, not at the university level. Yes. And that will take some of the fear out of the system, what these things are. In fact, if you really look into neural networks, you will be amazed how simple they are. When I wrote my first program in my life actually as a neural network simulator in 1975 at TU Munich. Except we had a 6-bit computer, so it only had 200 nodes. But is that it? It's like, it's a little bigger now. But the fundamental nature of these networks is really easy to understand, even for a high school student.
By the way, I couldn't agree more with what you just said, Christoph, and I want to come back around to it. But to dig a little bit more deeply into the education side, and I know we have to close out in a moment here, we're always talking about, table stakes moves, which is teach people data science and artificial intelligence. Yes, make it part of school education. What about teaching engineers about humans, right? About psychology, sociology, anthropology. Here at Stanford and at Berkeley, we have started to realize, and the engineers are coming to us and saying, how are we supposed to think about a human being who is non-optimizable, complex, political, emotional, right? Beautiful and very creative, but hard for a machine to really understand.
Yeah, well, AI can figure that out, actually. So I'm less worried about that. The real issue in Germany, to be quite honest, was it didn't have enough of a software industry until now. I mean, there's SAP, of course, but the truth is, if you had a degree in software engineering in Germany, you ended up working maybe at Microsoft or Google Labs or some IT customer service function for whatever company, right? But the industry has to embody software in all of its future products, whether it's the cars or the machines. The future value of the car, the differentiation is going to be the user interface and how smart the car is. And it needs lots and lots of software, whether it comes from Bosch or other places. And that needs software engineers that know how to write this software. Otherwise, all of this software will come from the US. So the industry has to embrace software across the board much more than in the past.
Thank you. I want to ask you each for one very brief comment. If there is one thing we could do to help the German strategy, to help the US strategy, the collaboration between the two, what should we be doing? What's like the one thing that we could start?
Well, you have to look at this beyond the short-term horizon. I mean, Mark Andreessen said 10 years ago, software eats the world, or software eats hardware, whatever. It's really true. I mean, it's accelerating. Software eats the hardware, or software eats the world. Over half of venture capital goes into software AI-related companies. Yeah. Try to start a chip company these days, it's really hard, where software companies get most of the funding. So the money goes where software is being created. It creates the highest value.
Is that founders capital, seed capital, or is that scaling capital? Because sometimes
no, it's both. But the point is, from a value creation standpoint, you can create the most value with software. It has all the advantages of the world. It has no cost of product. It's 100% margin. You can keep updating. It has an infinite life cycle. It's great. Okay, just do more software.
Yeah. Okay.
So one thing we need to do on our side, I don't know about the American side, is fix the venture capital problem. We're trying to do this for 20 years. Central Road is spending 30 billion every year, and all of Germany, it's not even measured by Statistisches Bundesamt. We're spending like $1 billion or 1.5 billion, which is a laugh. Let's fix the VC problem. I'm really frustrated a bit because I've been advocating this for the past 10, 15 years and nothing is happening.
Yeah. The 30 billion, by the way, is just for Silicon Valley, not for the US.
Yeah, 30 billion is just for Central Road, one street in Silicon Valley. All of you has a 60 billion, right?
Or maybe close to 100
even
this
more,
year.
Close to 100. So, it's depressing.
Yeah.
And we're stuck with 1.5. This is a laugh.
Yeah. Well, it's especially a laugh given that it's the fifth or sixth largest, actually the fourth largest economy in the world, right? So, I mean, frankly, we need to spend a lot more money. The new Agency for Disruptive Innovation is a point in Keese here, right? Because they're spending what, $200 million, whereas DARPA has a budget of $7 billion and up budget.
That's a good point. And just private households in Germany are saving 180 billion per year. This is the net profit of the private households. Guess where it goes? 50% goes onto typical bank accounts with absolutely no interest rate, and the other half goes to life insurances. This is a waste. We should be starting to invest in our children's future and our own future rather than just put it on the bank. So this is an aging and some complacent society. So good that you stayed here, but maybe we can...
Well, it's easy to start companies here, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hauke, final word?
Invest into education. That's a big burning point,
Education, education, education. Thank you, gentlemen. Please, a big round of applause for our panel here. Thank you. Thank you.